Are we live? Abuna Elijah. All right. Hello and welcome to the Reintroduction Podcast. I am your host, Mina Sawiris, with my co-host, Father Elijah Stefanos. And if you've missed Father Elijah, go back to episode 1, know why he's Father Elijah and not Chris Stefanos. We're happy to be here after a long-awaited while, actually, because we started the season a couple of months ago. We had episode 1, episode 2, and then we snoozed for a little bit, but we're very excited to be back here with you. Forgive us for this long pause, but we're happy to be here with another exciting episode title and stellar guests as usual. At this point, I don't think you can expect anything less from us than having stellar guests. Right, Abuna Elijah?
Absolutely. Because we're now this podcast has become famous, Mina. You know, my mom and your mom. And
absolutely. That's it. And
my
that's someone else's mom.
This podcast. So we're really wasting Abuna Kyrollos and
No.
Joseph's time. They're humoring us because they're such kind.
Absolutely. We're happy to be humored. Here we have Father Kyrollos Murad of St. Mary's Church in Montreal, Canada, and Father Joseph from St. Mary of Egypt and St. Mark's Church in Ottawa, Canada. So yes, 2 Canadians, but you know, it's okay. We love them, and that's why I'm wearing my. And that's why I'm wearing. If you can see me, I'm wearing my U.S. soccer team's national jersey to represent. Abuna.
That's the sport that represents you in the States.
Absolutely. Unfortunately, maybe soon, since Messi's coming to the States now. If you've heard, so things are about to change for U.S. soccer.
Yep.
But anyways. Yeah.
You know, when European soccer players go to the States, it's because
no, not this one, Father Kyrollos.
It wasn't like that with Beckham in the Galaxy or anything.
Maybe, but this one is different. This one is different for sure.
The next one.
This one is different. Said everyone all the time.
Okay.
We're so happy that both of you are here today. Father Kyrollos actually almost banned the podcast, and he said, if you guys don't allow Father Joseph to be with us today, I'm not going to join. So, and Father Joseph...
That was not the tone. I spoke to Father
Elijah. And Father Joseph, actually, just so you know, you're the first repeat guest on this podcast.
Wow.
Yes.
Wow.
We've had you episode 1 and season 2, so you're the first repeat offender at this point.
Is that Father? It's not Dr. Mina Merham?
No, well, he was with us season 1.
Oh,
yeah.
Oh, my bad.
So he was a repeat offender for sure, but as a guest, Father Joseph is the first one, definitely. So thank you both so much for joining. We're so happy that you're here.
Thank you.
Good to be here.
Honored to be only a first-time offender.
Yeah. Awesome. Father Elijah, what are we talking about today? Why do we have these 2 stellar guests?
So this is actually it's a conversation I'm really excited about because Abuna Kyrollos has been outreaching me, you know, because I'm a lost sheep and I need someone to outreach me regularly. And I have Father Joseph and Father Kyrollos outreaching me regularly because they know that I'm still in my pampers as a priest and I need as much outreach as I possibly can get. So Father Kyrollos was outreaching me and in the guise of humbly saying he likes this podcast. He's just such a sweet man and he's very encouraging.
Mercy. Hold on one second. Can I interrupt you, Father? Or
please.
Honestly, I discovered the podcast while after finally having downloaded Upper Room Media and in putting in a couple of search words, the podcast came up and I was like, I've been dying for such a long time to actually listen to them. And now that it's on Upper Room Media, I'm super happy. This is not a plug for anything, but if it is, hey, great. And I just called to congratulate you on having already called you the time before that for something absolutely superficial.
No. Come on,
a phone number of a
anyhow.
Outreach. I don't know. Anyway, sorry.
We're honored that you even listened to it. And
Father Kyrollos, just to tell you, is a very sweet, humble man. Yeah. But we were having a conversation last week. Father Kyrollos called me. And anytime Father Kyrollos calls me, I get very happy. And I always, no matter what is going on, I answer him to the best of my ability, at least. So he called me and we started to talk, and somehow he's just very authentic and he's a very real human. I'm not playing pleasantries. I'm just being honest. Every time I speak to him or Abuna Joseph, I feel like I can be myself. And the beautiful thing about being around people that are authentic is they lend opportunities for people to be authentic with them. And a conversation came up where I was telling Abuna Kyrollos about this person that had been really far from the church and had come back to the church and had been in the church for a little bit. And as she was attending, started to kind of look around and started to feel very much out of place. And it wasn't because the people weren't nice. It wasn't because the people weren't welcoming. She said, I just feel like this place is filled with people that have everything put together. And I'm just a mess, so I don't belong here. And I think that has rung in my ears because a lot of people, when they walk into the church, they feel like it is a museum of saints where everybody who's there belongs there because of their righteousness. And oftentimes that lends for people to feel uncomfortable, and it's not because of the sake of the fault of the flock of Christ or the people that are attending, but I think oftentimes it is a perspective that is had within the church community versus the reality that the church is a hospital for sinners. And all of us have sinned and fall short of the glory of God, and all of us are broken. So anyway, long-winded way of saying I had this really beautiful conversation with Father Kyrollos, and then we just talked, and he shared with a lot of experiences that he had, and I was like, man, you need to come on our podcast. Like, we need to have you on our podcast and have this conversation, because I think people really need to hear about being authentic and being vulnerable and being real and being just yourself. And yourself doesn't mean your most flawed version of yourself, which we'll nuance in a minute. But just I'll let these two speak to this subject. But that's how this conversation arose. So I'm really excited that they both are on here, and I will pass the mic off to Mina to ask the first question to these amazing fathers. So that is the impetus for this conversation.
So what does it mean to be an authentic Christian? I guess that is the short way of asking this question, is that we talk about authenticity a lot now in society in general, like be your true self, right? That's like, you hear that a lot in society outside of the church. So if we were to define this for ourselves within the church or within the faith, what does it mean to be authentic? And what does it mean to be an authentic Christian? And why are they different? Or is there even a difference between the two? So, Father Kyrollos, what do you think? Tell me.
The deal I had worked out with Father Joseph is that he would chime in first, but
No, that's fine. We'll do this together.
Yeah, whichever.
we'll do it. Okay, thanks.
Father Joseph.
So like as far as authenticity, things that come to mind are like a self-knowledge, right? A knowledge of self. Think of Saint Anthony. I think of Saint Anthony when he says, know yourself and you'll know God. And so there's a self-knowledge that's a part of this. There's also an identity that's kind of hidden in God, like in as much as like how God sees you is your authentic self, right? It's hidden in Christ, who we are. And I think a lot of us are not aware of any of that. And so we often find ourselves, acting, putting on a bunch of masks, afraid of what we might discover. And I'm just going to throw a few more ideas out there for Abuna Kyrollos to kind of explode. But like, it also makes me think of the prayer of the heart, and that the journey inside always leads you to self-knowledge, which further deepens the need for mercy and the cry for mercy.
Mm-hmm.
Brother Kyrollos, what do you think? What do you think of that element of the self-knowledge element when it comes to authenticity?
You know, when we look at when we mention the fall, we usually think of serpent approaches our mother Eve. She eats after being persuaded to do so, and then she gives it to our father Adam. He eats, and that's the fall. You know, for most people, I think, and we disconnected from the conversation between God and Adam and Eve, which is very, very similar to the conversation he has with Cain afterwards, right? There's an invitation to come and come clean, right? Adam, where are you? Cain, what have you done? Your brother's blood calls out to me from the earth. I think I'm paraphrasing that. I'm not saying that correctly. It's pretty and here's where it hits hard, according to if we go back to Father Elijah's fantastic intro, right? Which is no, I've got this, thank you very much, from the beginning, right? The invitation is to say something true. Is to say something, I mean, what can we put as synonyms when it comes to thinking about the word authentic? Father Elijah has already put vulnerable. Like he's contextualized the word authentic today with vulnerability, right? And the opposite of that is people having things figured out, right? I can't. The person who had led a life far away from the body of Christ, after rejoining and being excited, you could imagine how when a person rejoins is excited to maybe have read the Sermon on the Mount for the first time really in their life, even if they read it before when they were younger. They're saying the Our Father differently, the services, the incense, the icons, the approaching of the divine mysteries. This is all in a different light, for the person, and how that cannot be related, how that cannot be in any way, it can't come to fruition in my encounter with other people who say they're on the same wavelength is I'm sorry, I know I jumped the gun there. I'll come back, but that is reminiscent of that. I've got things worked out. I've got things worked out from the beginning. Absolutely germane to the topic of the fall is the effect of it on the human being. What is the fallen human being? What is the first thing you encounter in Adam as him fallen?
Self-protection, Abba. He's
protection.
He's covering himself. He covers himself right away.
I'm good.
With his words, he breaks relationship. He's like, the
I'm
woman
not
that
wrong.
you gave me.
Yeah, the
Right?
woman you gave me.
You gave
I'm
me.
good. The woman, neighbor, you gave me, God.
Of
right?
the fruit, right? Nature, even nature, he breaks himself away.
Absolutely, of all creation, which you are the custodian and priest and Lord over.
Yeah.
By Lord here we mean Lord as in
Dominus.
Yeah, to dominate over it, as in to be the steward thereof, according to God's definition of what it means to be Lord. But that's neither here nor there.
So the covering instantly creates separation.
Yeah.
Right. The leaves are saying, I'm no longer, in communion with whatever is actually there. I'm hiding something.
But it's God inviting you to this vulnerability. Hey, why don't you say what is true about this? If authentic here means truth, it means say come and be fair about what's happened. right? Like we say, the word truth in Coptic, it's the same word as just and righteous.
Yeah.
Right? It's methmi.
Yeah.
Right? Right? Like PFME, the just is the righteous, is the person who says the truth. That's me, right? Like it's the same word. And we call, and the real sense of that today is that someone is fair. It's fair, it's good, it's balanced, it's right, it restores harmony. It restores, I think it's Deacon Dr. Emmanuel Gilgis, who says, like he keeps referring us back to the concept of mat, which was there with the Egyptians. It's fair, and it also touches on beauty, right? What is beautiful, what is harmonious, what is supposed to be is, a man, a fair countenance, but that's either, but.
But Abuna, like one of the things is that if Adam was going to be truthful, it meant nakedness.
Yeah.
So it's a threat. There's a threat there. I mean, I know the threat in my own life, right? Like I know the threat. If I'm gonna be real, that means that it's an invitation to truth, sure, but it's also like nakedness.
Yeah, but here's the thing, right? Is that the nakedness is not caused by him being truthful. It's because he found himself naked that he decided to be untruthful. Like he ate, he immediately became aware of his nakedness. The nakedness is something if he comes to terms with, there's reconciliation, to return.
It's to bear it. It's to bear it, right? To bear the nakedness.
Yeah, to say, my bad.
Okay, my bad, because I'm gonna have to interrupt you here for a second.
No,
because
I was just like sitting like this, enjoying. I was just like, this is fantastic.
this is amazing, but we have to. I need to understand more of what you both are telling me here. So let me try and break this in segments so I make sure I understand you correctly. Okay.
Sorry.
So no, what do you mean? This is amazing. Thank you. Honestly, I mean, Father Elijah and I could just go home right now and this is amazing. so let me ask you this then. Essentially, the idea is that man, when he was created according to the image of God, he was created an authentic being, right? Then when
he was really human.
Really human.
Well, potentially, no?
Right, potentially, right, exactly. Potentially to be in, right, according to the likeness of God. So he had what it takes to get there. And then as a result of the fall, he ended up breaking away from God, breaking away from neighbor, his wife, breaking away from nature, technically separated himself from everything. And as a result of that, the consequence of that is that he became inauthentic, because his natural reaction was to cover and to blame and to put everything on anything and everyone else except for himself. And then if we were to take that and to bring it back to the point that Father Joseph started with, and Father Joseph, you said in the beginning that the way to walk that back essentially is a road of self-discovery, self-knowledge. And once you go through that road of self-knowledge, what Father Kyrollos, you said is that you discover that you are actually naked. And that discovery of your nakedness is essentially you saying, I am incomplete, something is wrong and I do need help. And that confession, the outwardly confession then of your realization that you're naked and you need to be clothed and you need someone to help you, is your road or your way back on that road of recovery to becoming once again authentic or on the road to authenticity. Is that what you guys are saying in a sense?
It's a lot better than what I said.
No, not at
Be
all.
honest. Be straight.
Not at all. So that's kind of where we find ourselves then here is that on that road of, according to what Father Joseph was saying, is that your self-discovery opens up the door for you to realize that you don't have things figured out. And that's the scary part that most of us kind of stop at.
Can I just, sorry, this may throw us off a little, but
Please.
I think while you're describing all of this, literally my heart is in pain as I think of all the mechanisms within the church, right? All the mechanisms in which we posture ourselves, and all the mechanisms that are there to make us look like we've got it all put together, like that person that you were talking about earlier, Father Elijah. Right? So there's all these mechanisms that we can jump into to make ourselves look like we've got it figured out, that are almost in the way of that self-discovery, of that discovery of the nakedness, of that cry for mercy, right? The oh my goodness, I don't have this figured out. So I'm sorry, I was just, while you were describing this, I was in pain. Like it actually, it's painful to see what the ego and kind of the religious ego that's constantly trying to hide the fact that it's not God, right? Ultimately, it's too painful for the ego to discover that it's not God. And so it's constantly seeking to make itself God. And I think there's all these, whether in the church or in life, so much of our experiences, these mechanisms that make us feel like God.
With or without him. With or that's the question. That's the question I'm having. Like to feel like God without God. You know, there's a reason why the gospel of the woes, you know, woe unto you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites, is immediately after the whole ordeal with the fig tree. You know, if the fig tree brings us back to that first state of fallenness, then, you know, what is the result? I am righteous, right? God, I've got it put together. Tassels, tithing, and all, right? Greet me in the marketplaces, call me rabbi, call me teacher. You know, I think in the time of Christ, nobody had it put together more than the Pharisees. You know?
Yeah, I gotta tell you this. Today I put my am on for the first time in a really long time. And one of the people at our parish came and asked me if I got a promotion.
Oh, because you put your hat on.
Boone, did you get a promotion? They had never, you know. Sorry, back to what you were saying.
I'm 6'2" now. Keeping up with Curry. I'm sorry.
Sorry.
You could have had a career in the NBA, Father Kyrollos.
With the hymn.
Yeah, with the hat.
Sorry.
Do you both think? Do you think that? So I guess this is in a sense a question for all three of you, since you hear and you take confessions, and this might not be like a true question, but do you think the bottleneck is not knowing? People do not know that they are actually naked, like they're unwilling to put in the time and effort to discover that they are naked, or is it that they know that they are, but they choose to consistently cover? Or which one is more prominent of our society or what we see around us today? Which one is more of a problem? What do you think?
I think the common tendency is to cover whenever there's something that really hurts, that is, you know, discovered by you, or that you are surprised to find yourself, you know, succumbing to yet again, you know, especially when you think you had it, you know, you got it, you're done with it, whatever it is, or the whole system, the whole thing is based on keeping up appearances.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah, but
what somebody explained to me this. Why are there $250,000 Omega watches? Right? And these are not the most expensive watches. There's Omega, shameless unplug. I don't know what that is, right? Makes like, there's one Swiss maker who makes 2 of these a year. They're $250,000 each, and they tell you the time in the way any $5, and they lose more time per year, beautifully handmade as they are, compared to the $5 digital watch you can pick up anywhere that will not lose a single second, a single millisecond every year. Right? What are we about when we have stuff like that? Because there is such a thing as diminished returns. What are we about? What does it mean for status? What does it mean that we live in a world where if I wear that watch, I really can tell certain people what to do in a certain tone and relish in it and lord it over them, especially when I match it with certain quality wool suits, alligator shoes, maybe a Lambo or two.
So you're saying part of also being like the pressure of, because it's easier to be inauthentic than it is to be authentic. And part of that pressure translates into whether we are, whether we feel pressured by outside forces or society or even ourselves to conform to either like a new way of like living or a certain way of appearance. Like this is the way that normal people who are self-made or like successful, they have to appear in a certain way. Or it takes the place of like moral judgment, is that if I want to live a comfortable life, I should not speak about certain things or change the way I view certain things. Like it's about this pressure that's coming from the outside to force us to act in an inauthentic way. So it's almost against self. Like part of our nature wants to be authentic, and part of the surrounding forces against us are forcing us to be inauthentic. And that battle between the two is constantly there, but we choose sometimes to reflect on it, or sometimes we ignore it. We just go on about as if it's not even there. So how do we so the question becomes then, from a practical sense, Father Joseph, what does it mean when you talk about self-discovery or self-knowledge? What does that mean practically speaking? How can someone even like begin to think about something like that?
I think there's I've been really spending a lot of time thinking about Orthodox psychotherapy and kind of the understanding of the human and how the human functions, the soul and the powers of the soul, and this kind of stuff really fascinates me. There's a great book out there called God's Path to Sanity. I'm not sure if you guys have heard of it. It's a fantastic book. There's the Orthodox psychotherapy book by Kyrollos Murad. There's a number of really great books, but a lot of that, a lot of what I'm reading always comes back to the fact that we have a mind with which we think, we have a heart with which we desire, and we have the irascible with which we produce zeal towards different things. And so understanding that model and looking at that model, I become hyper aware of what the church fathers call the passions. I become aware of the things that I desire, the things that I think about, the things that I put my energy towards. And it's very revealing. It's very revealing. Like it's wild. It's wild. It's like, whether it's vainglory or whether it's pride or whether it's, greed or whatever the passion is, those passions are incredibly revealing about, the work or the desire or the direction of my life that is so absolutely contrary to love, right? Ultimately to humility, to truth, to Christ himself. So I think the first practical step is to become acquainted with what it is that you're suffering from. What is it that you desire, actually desire, not fake desire, not like, Sunday school, yeah, I want union with God. Yeah, really? Do you? That means death. Is that what you're going for? You going for, so to begin to be, even just start by becoming real with yourself and recognizing how divided I am. I mean, I've got, for every one of the desires that I have a whole set of thoughts and a whole set of, energy and zeal to achieve these desires, whether it's a great meal, a fun time, or whether it's to look great in front of people or to look intelligent or whatever it is, right? So it's to sit down in silence and to discover the motives, the intents, the movements of the heart, and then to not lie to yourself, and to kind of see it in all the ugly faces, that it presents itself, and then to bear some of that pain, to bear some of that shame, to bear and be like, wow, that's really messed up.
Yeah.
Have either any one of you three, have you seen people who have come to you, whether like they're part of your like flock or your congregation or people that you know personally? Have you witnessed people go through this journey of self-discovery and come out victorious on the other end? Is that real? One of you's got to tell me.
I've only been in the game for 10 months, so I don't know anything about this. So
Yeah, I'm a new priest too. So how about in your vast experience?
Abuna said something. He said, "Are you sure you're ready for that? Because that means death. You're talking about union with Christ." Saint Onofrius, known in our church as Saint Nofer, who was, according to his Synaxaria, he was basically, in the monastery since he was a babe, and he grew up in the ethos of monasticism. Like, that's all he's known, right? And he grew up with holy people, and and as we know about his biography from Saint Paphnutius, who wrote his biography, is that he had reached the scary level holy. You know what I'm saying? Like, people who are completely united with God, and they carry that that level of holiness, insofar as it's terrible to encounter God head on, kind of thing, And this man, having had by divine revelation, having known at the time of his departure, the night of his departure, he was heard praying at length throughout the whole night. The eve of his departure, I should say. Throughout the whole night, he was praying. And it's recorded somewhere in one of the books that I read early on in my teenage years. He said, "You know that I have done nothing all my life. With all my life, I've done nothing. I have nothing good to show for this wasted life." Now, we can take that in two ways. Either Saint Onofrius is, completely crazy, and by that, if you want to put as synonyms with it, like, some sort of inauthentic actor, hypocrite, whatever, suffering from, like, the self-induced delusional humility, as we call it, humility in good Copto Arabic, English, or we. It's a good thing Father Elijah's muting. or that's an authentic experience. That because the thing you said, Huya, was they come out victorious on the other side. The thing about this journey is that the more you make headway into it, the more you discover the darkness within. The more you discover, but you discover that darkness in Christ's light, in Christ's all loving, all merciful, all compassionate, all encouraging light. Right? It's not a discovery of your darkness that leads to despair and to dejection and to dejection. Sorry, I gotta enunciate that. Right? It's a discovery of your nakedness, of your lack, that is in invitation to let him clothe you, to let him cover you. Right? And the more you discover that sinfulness, that lack, that brokenness, the more you're able to invite him to further take over, to further heal, to further enter, to further abide, to more deeply so. Yes, Abuna Joseph brought up St. Anthony. I always say this all the time. My youth at church are sick and tired of me always repeating these two phrases. St. Anthony the Great says, "He who sees his sins is better than he who sees angels." And St. Isaac of Syria, a few centuries later, says, "He who sees his sins is better than he who raises the dead." To see your sin in Christ's light, to see your darkness in Christ's light, is joy beyond any speech, beyond any expression. It's ineffable joy. Because there's like Father Peter Farrington says, there's a real joy in knowing that you're a sinner who is loved by God, and who is the object of his affection, and who is the aim of his life-giving, all-healing economy.
And that's wildly liberating, right?
Yeah.
Right? We always think of inauthenticity as easier, but my guess is that it's like, what a burden to act a certain way around people in order to hide who you really are. That duality, that division it fragments the soul. And so I imagine that these holy people who are holy because they know their sins, what a paradox, right? They're holy because they've embraced their nakedness and invited the Lord.
Yeah.
I imagine that's a lot, not easier, but I imagine that's like you're saying, just, yeah.
I think an important footnote real quick here, if you'll allow me.
Allow.
Thank you. Is to differentiate between, because sometimes you say this stuff and people are like, but Abuna, honestly, and without any without trying to be in any way fussy about this, I can't think of anything wrong I'm doing. And that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about discovering your sinfulness as in your nakedness, that you're in deep need for God, right? And that's why nothing. You see, today we don't speak about. It's almost like Abe. It's almost like it's not PC to speak about arrogance. It's not popular, because pride has become, in the last decade and a half, I think, 2 decades, pride has become like a virtue again. We don't speak about pride like the arch passion anymore. like as C.S. Lewis, as St. Clive, says, we don't say St. Jack, we don't say with him that pride is the anti-God state of being. What Adam is exhibiting with our mother Eve, when they're called to confess, when they're called to come clean, that is to say, to speak with God, to re-enter into prayer. What's preventing them there is that arrogance that is the fruit of pride. And then when they're out there in the world, well, how do they find their place in the world? How does that arrogance bear fruit? How do you call yourself someone among other people as you're separate from God? Well, you've got to have things speak for you, right? You've got to, how do people evaluate each other now outside of this relationship with God? You've got to amass things, right? Our father Jacob, in sitting down at the well, in asking about his uncle, Khelu, Laban, says, does he have peace? To have peace in that context means to be a man of mammon, right? He's a man of he has gravitas because he has things. X amount of oxen, X amount of sheep, X amount of land, X amount of drivers he can send to have you picked up from the airport. You know what I mean? He carries weight. He carries weight. Anybody know anything about kavod? Joseph, you wanna, he's heavy, gravitas. He's a heavy, he's a heavy guy. He's heavy duty, we say in American, right?
Which pointing to your unawareness of your need for God.
Yeah,
right?
of course. You wake up in the morning and you light up, 48 screens in your office, and you've got to make sure that everything's at the right number. If you're walking in the street and there's $1,000 on the ground, you're wasting your time, bending down, picking it up. You've got so much at stake.
So in a sense, then, like what you both have said in the last couple of minutes, then you're not, Father Kyrollos, you're not talking about sitting at the end of your day, in an attempt to self-discover and just come up with a list of oh, I said this curse word today, or I wasn't nice to this person. You're talking about something much deeper than that. Not just a list of sins, right? This is not what we're talking about. And to relate that to what Father Joseph was saying right before you is that, and in a sense, it answers the question of why do I need to go through that? Why can't I just stay to keep doing what I'm doing? If someone is listening to this and said, dude, this sounds too hard with self-death and whatever, why? And in a sense, Father Joseph, you're saying is that the result of not going through that journey is self-decay, or that dichotomy of the soul that separates itself, because the struggle of being inauthentic and consistently lying to yourself and lying to the world about who you are betrays your soul day after day after day until it decays and it breaks down. And then if you're doing that, and the way you're doing that then goes back again to what Father Kyrollos is saying about that deeper level of not just talking about sins and behaviors. It's much deeper, because our day to day is either tied in pleasures, in seeking after certain pleasures, or it's tied up in distractions, consistently being distracted, or certain propensities,
Or power.
or power.
Add another
Right.
beat to it. Acquiring power.
Right.
Right.
And these are the things that basically keep us in this cycle of, in a sense, loss of purpose day in and day out, until a year passes, 5 years, 10 years, and all of a sudden you look back at your life, a life that was supposed to have been about self-discovery and reaching authenticity, and you've just did the same thing day in and day out, and you've got nothing to show for it. So in a happy way, in an amazing invitation to truly self-discover and be someone who's willing to look deep to go through some pain and some self-discovery in order to truly become the best version of yourself that God had ever wanted you and dreamed you to be. Dig deeper then. Look a little bit deeper than just sins. Understand your deep need for God, that now that you know that you're naked, is because once you do, the joy that comes from being clothed by God, as opposed to being clothed by pleasures, distractions, or propensity or power or whatever, that in itself gives you like a real joyful sense of purpose that you might go about life without ever tasting if you don't pay attention to it. Is that, yeah, tell me.
Can I jump in for a second?
Please do.
Just because
And please,
it's been so nice listening. Like,
I implore thee.
this is the best part of this season's podcast. I feel like I don't have to say much. I just wonder, as people are listening, how they're processing this information. And I wonder, even as I'm listening, how I'm processing this, how I'm sort of listening to this conversation and thinking to myself, okay, you're basically telling me to acknowledge myself in a way as a sinner and as broken and as not in a sinner in a way that like, in a sinner is that I'm missing the mark. Like I'm not living the way that I ought to, and I'm not digging the way that I ought to, and I'm not seeing the reality of what I was created to be and the reality of what I was created to do. And because I'm not seeing that, it's very easy for me to cover myself with things that make me feel better about myself. And I don't think that's shocking for a lot of people if somebody were to listen to this and say, yeah, like our society really suffers from insecurity. It's one of the biggest things that people talk about is I feel insecure in my friend groups. I feel insecure in my job. I feel insecure in my community. I feel insecure in my church. I feel insecure in everything. So because I feel insecure, I'm more inclined to try to make myself secure with things that are superficial, fig leaves, designer fig leaves in a way, right? And then help me understand this. So then if I come to this acknowledgement today and I say, you know what? I admit it. I've been covering myself with designer fig leaves. I've been inauthentic. I've been coming to church, or I've been living as a Christian as though I have to have it all put together, as though I just need to put on facade, fake it till you make it, so to speak. What does this journey, I think what Mina was saying a few minutes ago, what does this journey entail? And why would I want to do it if I've been getting by, right? Like people at church think I'm holy. In fact, I'm like the well-balanced one. I've got a lot of money. I like serve in church. I like give. I'm a Sunday school teacher. I have a podcast, I'm good. Like I look, what more do you want from me? And it's not my fault people are coming into the church and seeing me and thinking less of themselves. They're insecure. They have their issues. And maybe I've digressed this a bit because I feel like,
Not at all.
But I'm trying to speak my language of my brokenness. And I think in my own journey with God, it wasn't until I really acknowledged myself as really broken that God could really come in and heal the areas where I do have designer fig leaves. And that's a journey that's still ongoing, and it's still manifesting. And it's not even close to where God knows he wants to take me. But the reality is that there is something about this fear of being real that if I start to take off these designer fig leaves, then what are people going to say, and how are people going to perceive me? And will they even think it as authentic, or will they think it as fake? You know, I remember early on in my journey of kind of turning away from the darkness in a way, people couldn't believe it. They're like, what? That's Chris? Like, what do you mean he's like, what? Like, that guy was a guy who was like this and this and this and this and this. And I think a lot of people fear that because they're even that part is scary. Like, I don't, like, somebody said to me yesterday, sitting with somebody yesterday, and it blew me away. She's like, I know, and this really humbled me so much. She's like, I know God loves me so much, and I know God wants me, and I know life with him will be so much more meaningful and so much more purposeful. But like, I don't know if I can make it. Like, I love the dark side more. Like, so give me a word of encouragement, fathers. Give me like, tell me if I am this person. So tell me what I should do to continue to let myself believe that there is hope for me, that there is healing, that vulnerability actually, like me acknowledging my brokenness before God and him seeing me and him entering into my brokenness and carrying me on his shoulders. Like, I think there's a really great quote that y'all reminded me of. It's from St. Mark the Ascetic. And he says, it's impossible for anyone to begin to live a holy life unless he sees himself a sinner and understands the greatness of his sin. For the knowledge of ourselves and our own weakness drives us to seek the strength that comes from God alone. So what do I do? Go, Buddha Joseph.
So as you're talking, what comes to mind is something that has always just made me melt at the thought of how beautiful Jesus is. So he, we know this. He went up on a mountain, and when he was seated, his disciple came to him, and he opened his mouth and he taught them, saying, okay, I'm going to just take a little journey and then come back. Okay, just bear with me. One of the things that I always try to realize in reading scriptures is there are no Christian principles. There's only Christ. Okay, so there's no Christian principles. There's only Christ. There's no teaching or truth or methme that's outside of him, right? So when he speaks, all he's doing, there's no Christianity. Exactly.
What is Christianity?
Exactly. So when he's speaking, he is only revealing what is, and he is what is. He's revealing himself. So knowing this, coming back to him opening his mouth and speaking, what does he say? He says, blessed are the poor in spirit. So what do you do with that, knowing that that's him revealing about himself? Until you begin to read the rest of scripture and you realize that he's like, the words that I speak, they're not my own. Wait a second. The doctrine that I speak is not my own. The works that I do, they're not my own. It's good for me to leave because the Holy Spirit is coming. Even the second person of the Trinity is in relationship with the Father and the Spirit in a way that says, this is what it means to be alive. This is what it means to be pointing away from myself. He says to the people, learn from me, for I am lowly. He's not acting lowly. Okay, so he's not acting in an inauthentic way as lowly and humble of heart. He actually is lowly and humble of heart. And this is where people, we often have this idea of being, okay, so I'm a sinner. Okay, I discover my sinfulness. the discovery of sinfulness is an invitation to become human again. It's to become small again. It's to become lowly again, which is actually really beautiful, which is actually like, who wants to be, like Abuna was saying, when Kyrollos was saying, who wants to be around an arrogant person? Why are we annoyed by arrogant people? Because it's ugly. It's ugly. What's beautiful? A humble person. There's so much beauty in the humility of Christ, but he's not acting. He's not faking it. So when he says, blessed are the poor in spirit, that's like, hey, you guys that are living up on that mountain over there with all your fig leaves, and you guys who have gone way higher and made yourselves gods, like in a Babylonian kind of pursuit, no, descend, come back. You'll find me in the lowest place. So, you're talking about, like, as though the discovery of one's sinfulness or one's nakedness or one's need for God is something apart from the truth that Jesus reveals when he says, the stuff the works that I do, they're not even my own. Like the words, the doctrine, the teaching, he's constantly pointing away from himself to the glory of his Father, right? And the Father's constantly pointing away and revealing, the Son and sending the Spirit. And the Spirit is constantly saying, like, Abba, Father, inside of us, and then pointing to the Lordship of Christ. This is what it means to be. So, like Nina, when you were talking about decay, we're decaying because we've elevated ourselves in an unnatural way. But that smallness that we can return to, it's not depressing, it's joyful. When you recognize that you need God, it's not like darn, now I'm not self-sufficient. Oh shoot, I'm not Mr. Independent. Oh, now I'm like weak and needy. No, it's such a joy to be small. Like, it's a joy to be like poor. That poverty of spirit is such, and that we're participating in what it means to be truly human with the Theanthropos. Like he shows us what it means to be human. That's what authentic is, right? Like when he says, "Blessed are the poor in spirit," to me, that's when you were talking about that. Who doesn't want to be small? Who wouldn't want to be with Christ in the valley?
Satan.
I don't know.
As you're reflecting on this, and as you're speaking, you and Father Kyrollos, and talk about the joy of being authentic, part of me feels that joy, and another part of me feels sad. And I think it's because there is that part of me that is fighting this. It's like, that's too much, man. Like this just sounds too much. Part of me says,
Are you being real, or are you trying to like speak on behalf of people that are watching?
no, I'm being real. I'm talking about myself.
Okay, just checking.
I'm talking about me.
This is like a setup question. You really feel that?
No, this is not theoretical. This is me. This is it. Just like, because I understand it, it almost, it feels liberating and it feels burdensome all at the same time. Is that a natural feeling, or are other people feeling the same thing, or no? Is it natural, as you go through talking about this and thinking about it and reflecting on it, that you feel part of you just does not want to let go?
If you approach this like as some sort of self-help program, then yeah, that's what you're going to feel like. If you're listening to this podcast and saying, okay, so what do I have to do now? Like, what's required of me? Right? You're putting yourself at the exact same place as when, when we have this in our yearly Sunday lectionary, the rich young ruler who goes up to Christ and says, Master, like, I bought the t-shirt. I've kept the fasts. I know the hymns. I know Tasbih and Coptic. I tithe. Right? I observed June 1st. It was National Coptic Day, and I'm all on board. I'm, I've been through servants prep, and I'm a Sunday school teacher. I make sure I renew my batrashil once every 3 years.
And those are the mechanisms, Abuna. Those are the mechanisms.
What do I do now? When I got married, everybody was saying to my future wife's parents that my future in-laws that he's such a good shemes.
Deacon. Such a good deacon.
Yeah, he's a good deacon. Thanks. Yeah, sorry. Gotta keep this English. Forgive me. I said, but they probably said shemes, not deacon. But, because he was probably a reader or chanter who doesn't even need to wear Tony. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. Point is like, what do I do now? Now when Christ revealed to him the obstacle, or when he showed him not the obstacle, but the way.
Yeah.
Positiveness of, hey, maybe it's time to let go of all of this foolishness and come and get real with me. Let me give you some reality, some authenticity. Can we pause for that for a second? Because I just want to mention something. Like I think, for your consideration, humor me, right? When Moses meets the angel of the Lord, the second person of the Trinity, in that bush, right? And he gives him his name, and he tells him, tell him, I am sent you on, right? Via Chob, as we say in Coptic, right? The one who is. We talk a lot about the existing one, right? We talk about, the one who is, and I am the great I am, and all of that. But when you read St. Athanasius and then reread the scriptures and go back and forth, when you read St. Athanasius on the incarnation, something I know now that you're all big on, having listened to the first season of this podcast, to my edification. The existent one here is the only one who doesn't change. He's the only one who is real. Like if you and I were talking about authenticity in terms of a diamond or something really, really precious, like a diamond, and it undergoes change, then would you purchase it? Would you give it its great price? Like gold is gold because it's highly what's the word I'm looking for? It doesn't react with the environment around it. It
Stable.
stays. What? Sorry.
Stable.
Stable as a metal, right? It's there's a word for that, but I can't remember that word in something. But it doesn't react, right? So it stays gold. Like if it goes, it doesn't oxidize, doesn't tarnish like silver. That's why silver isn't the price of gold. The fact that something doesn't change makes it a lot more real, right? So when he says I am, he's saying I'm the only real. I'm the only real. I can't say real thing, right? He is authenticity itself. He is truth itself. And by truth I mean it never wavers. It never falls from what it is. And I have to, unfortunately, because of my human weakness, speak in the abstract and say it. But he never changes. This Ho'on, this one who is, who never was and will be in the sense of past and present, but who always is, outside of time, outside of space, always is, becomes human. Because in the way he engineered us from the beginning, he created us, he formed us and created us, as the liturgy says, is completely compatible to receive him fully. And he reveals to us what a human being is. And he reveals to us, this conversation is nothing but an extension of what you've already had a conversation with Father Joseph before on this podcast. Because to be human means to be vulnerable. The first line that Father said, the first few lines that Father said from Matthew 5 are the archetypical. They are the not archetypical. They are the flag. They are the slogan. They are the anthem, I should say, of what the Egyptian church thinks about the cross, where we see what a real human being is. Vulnerable, and removing nothing from who he is. If I strip him naked and nail him to a wood, it does not remove from him his isness, his ho'onness, his fiat shobness, the one we keep on calling fiat shob in the liturgy. O you who are, O you who are, O you who is, O you the I am, right? The fiat shob in the Greek is, when we say fiat shob of nuti, right? It's on the in the Greek original, right? It's the name he gives Moses of who he is. And our only anchor to that reality, is by becoming one with him, is by entering into relationship with him and encountering him. And how that reality and how we grow in becoming like him is a process. And it's not disconnected from what you said earlier, dear brother, when you said, do I sit down and I go over a list of what I did wrong today? Yeah, that's where it starts. That's precisely where it starts. But before that, you give thanks, because that's the original issue behind it all. You say thank you. You take stock. Metropolitan Anthony Bloom of thrice blessed memory, he in his counsel, in his encounter with that old lady and beginning to pray, right? He says, okay, it was that I'm sure you all remember. It was a story about that old lady who's tried the Jesus prayer over and over, and she lives in an elder people's home. And the first step he tells her is, sit down in your room, arrange it, clean it up, tidy it up, sit down in your chair and take stock of everything there. Like, take stock of the room, give thanks. Give thanks. And then, as you remember your sin, as you remember those things that didn't go well today, ask for mercy based on his great mercy. And here is where exomologisis, confession, starts to be formed inside you. This expression that's on the same level as the Logos. As the same level as the Logos, who is the only one who has become man, in order to reveal to you what man is, and he transfers to you this humanity that is united to his divinity. By you being able to meet him at where you are. By saying thank you, I accept everything as it comes from you. I'm happy, I'm joyous, especially since you've covered me, helped me, supported me, and you've brought me to this hour, to this present moment. This present moment in which I can encounter you. And then you start formulating a coming to terms with who you really are.
So take us back to the rich young ruler.
So the rich young Saint John Chrysostom, thank you so much. Saint John Chrysostom says, the foolishness of this man, who's supposed to be learned, right? The foolishness is not in that he didn't say goodbye to everything on the spot and follow Christ. Foolishness is that he left Christ and walked away. Had he continued trying to follow Christ, despite the stuff he's carrying, he would end up giving it all up. Right? But there's a difference between saying, well, no, that's off the table, I'm not going to give it up, and walking away from Christ, or I'm not going to give it up, but let's see what I could, because Christ meets you where you are. Christ meets you where you are, and as long as you're making headway with the help of someone who's made headway in confession, then you can come clean. Unlike our father Adam and our mother Eve in that encounter, and certainly unlike Cain in that encounter with God after he murdered his brother.
So what you're saying then is that the unchanging nature of God that is like gold, that despite circumstances, despite situation, doesn't change. And the fact that we perceive him as also unchanging, it gives us that faith in who he is and his promises, even though, despite the rich young ruler's reaction, is that if I'm sitting here listening to you speak right now, and I'm saying, everything you're saying sounds amazing, but I'm not ready for it. But I'm also not walking away. Like I'm ready to sit right here and kind of just like listen some more. Like this might be just a door to listen just some more, more. This might not be an invitation for tomorrow, like a whole new journey of self-discovery. But at least if I'm willing to say, okay, I don't like what you say, or I kind of like what you say, but I'm not sure. But I'm not walking away. I'm not going to just like completely abandon this. I'm ready. I'm going to sit at Christ's feet and listen to him speak some more and reveal some more of himself to me. Maybe tomorrow will be different. Maybe next month will be different. Maybe next year will be different. That is also acceptable in a sense, right?
Yeah, just keep engaging him.
Yeah.
Maybe he'll say something where you ask a question where something hits home.
Just don't walk away.
And by the way, the services of the church are built for this, right? They're built so that you become more of this person automatically. If you just adopt the words, like if you make the words of the services your own, you're automatically starting to become that kind of person. Everything is operating at a frequency. You remember like J.R.R. Tolkien, he says, everybody was singing something, all of these beings were singing, and then somebody started singing something out of harmony, and recently I was sitting down with a group of very close friends, and we were talking about the sci-fi trilogy from C.S. Lewis, and he says, I haven't read those, to my shame, and I really should, being such a fan of Saint Jack as I am, but he talks about like all the planets were singing, and then there's this one planet that stops singing. That's why one of the books is called Out of the Silent Planet. There's this sense of everything is always transmitting a logos, right? It's always like informing you of something. It's always, it's always making you think a certain way. Like if you take this thing in, or if you approach it in that certain way, or if you consume it in that way, there's an adoption. There's a of that way of thinking, or of that way of seeing, or of that way of being, as a result thereof. Right? Information transformation. Right? And if you're constantly, getting your information from shorts or from reels, right? Well, guess what? Like, there's algorithms there that are built to encourage a certain way of, and especially there's, you guys get what I'm trying to say. If you're playing the game on Wall Street, guess what? There's a lot of logos there.
The game will keep you playing too.
Right, exactly.
Yeah,
exactly. And there's a whole bunch of things that you've got to like load up on.
And the medium is often the message too, right?
Absolutely, absolutely.
Right.
And that's why we know things, like even like just look at a car, right? Like a Hummer, a real Hummer, like a military Hummer, not these poser Hummers. Sorry, H2, H3. But a real Hummer, if I put Arnold Schwarzenegger beside a Hummer, it makes sense. But if I put 85-year-old, grandma who's fit and active and everything, but she's beside the Hummer, it's kind of funny. Because what? Because there's clashing logos there.
Dissonance, yeah.
You know what I mean? There's a dissonance there. And same thing for like natural, like man-made things. Like if I put Arnold Schwarzenegger beside an oak, or like a Viking warrior image beside an oak, that makes sense. If I put like a bouquet of roses, it looks kind of funny. Or like, a bouquet of pansies, it even looks funnier. Marigold, because everything has this frequency that it's operating at, right? Well, the scriptures, they are, especially the Psalms, as we use them in worship, as the church teaches us to use them, they are completely in harmony with the Logos himself, with the one who is the Logos. In fact, when he became human, there was nothing in them that weren't completely ready for him, because they were put there by his Spirit, and they're in complete harmony with him. They're in complete. They can handle him praying them as the God-man. Like, they can handle that level of intensity, where if God becomes man, they're ready to meet him and match his level of intensity. And what do you think they're doing to you if you pray them? What do you think they're taking you? If it's the self-same, uncreated and life-giving Spirit who has inspired them, who has breathed into them and made them ready for the God-man to pray them, to be the means by which he speaks to his Father, the one who has never stopped communication with his Father, then what are they forming you to be? How are they forming you to think? Right? If me joining Wall Street, or if me, like, I'm not saying like, but whatever comes with that, me joining like a club that, I don't want to say Wall Street, but you like, if I'm joining like a firm that's all about the image, the suits, the appearances, and it encourages, arrogance in me. It encourages like self-assurance in me. It makes it so that God is like a Sunday morning activity.
Yeah.
Right? And like you can't shake it. Like, I got a lot of numbers, I got a lot of digits in my bank account, a lot of commas. I can rely on that. I'm good.
Your soul is required of you.
And your soul is required of you. You fool. You fool, says Luke writes. Right? Because it's foolishness. It's the opposite of Sophia.
So what are you, sorry, just to hear you're saying that the liturgical services, the Psalms, the stuff that the church is doing to faithfully walk in them is part of the healing in the authentic way.
Yeah, and they form confession in you, positive and negative. I mean, by positive and negative, I mean like you confess your lack, but you confess, by confessing your lack, you're confessing directly what? His great love, which is forever. For his mercy endures forever. Have mercy upon me, O God, according to thy great mercy, which endures forever. Right? And if I'm pulled into that forever, then I'll sing your praises. Open my mouth. We just thought about this yesterday, Father Joseph and I. Open my mouth, and my mouth shall declare
your praise.
Open my, like it's joy and liberation and freedom and glory, real glory, right? Not vainglory. Real glory. Beyond what? Beyond what we can fathom. Beyond what we can ask for or understand.
Father,
and you had it the whole time.
Father Elijah, I'm going to repeat back something that Father Kyrollos said to you. I'm going to ask you, can you maintain this level of intensity? Because this is just, take me home, man. I don't know. I can't do this.
I mean, we're an hour and 20 minutes in right now, and it feels like we've been on for like 5 minutes.
And there's so much. I mean, I don't even. I have to go back and re-listen to everything you guys said.
100%.
Half of the things that you said did not register, so I need to go back and kind of.
No. I think just this is when you just encounter.
Mm.
Like I don't think there are words, right? And this is where you find the mystical reality of Pope Cyril VI. This is where you find the mystical reality of many of his disciples that encountered him and his love for the church and his realness and his authentic humanity, and were transformed not by the words that he spoke, but by the life that he lived. And I'm fascinated by him as a figure in the church, because he wasn't about doing things. He was about being. And I think from this conversation, I definitely have to go back and re-listen to it. Like I'm 90, like, I mean, but I think what my walkaways are personally is, I think, man, there's so much. Like, I just try to like synthesize it into like one sentence. I mean, there was a lot today that was said that was really powerful. I can't even put it into words. I mean, like I don't really have the words to express. I think just come and see.
Wow. Yeah.
Come and see. For those who have never seen, come and see the real, vulnerable, real, authentic human in the person of Christ, and don't look right or left. Don't look side to side. Don't look at any other person. Just come and see. Because if you come and see, you will see yourself for what you can be and who he created you to be, and how much he looks past where you are and carries you and takes you to the place where you really can become who he wants you to be. Like I just don't have, like, my words are probably jumbled and don't really make sense.
I think they make a lot more sense than whatever
Absolutely.
I said.
But I think, I don't think, for anyone who's listening to this conversation, I think we were expecting the spirit to take us in a very different direction. We had like our man-made perspectives of how this conversation was going to go. And I think the spirit really directed us to the person of Christ, as he always does, which is, if you want to be vulnerable, look at Jesus. If you want to know what it means to be authentic as a Christian, look at Jesus. If you want to see, and not just look at him theoretically, walk with him. And I think I'm really,
I feel you.
having sufficiency in everything always may abound in every good deed. That's the only word that comes to mind. I for some reason, I was praying liturgy this morning, and those words blew me away. Like,
Yeah.
if we were to just pause and meditate on those words, having sufficiency in everything always may abound in every good deed.
Yeah. What does sufficiency mean here? Just enough to be. The rest for the widow, the orphan, the traveler, the stranger.
I took it even this morning, Abuna. I was like taking it as like, I have you, I'm sufficient. If I have you, I don't need anything.
Edit out what I said. Edit out what I said.
No. I think
But you is the widow, the orphan, the traveler, the
yes,
stranger.
yes. Yes. I
But
have
edit
no
out
other.
anyway.
I literally have no other but you. To whom else shall I go? Like, I have no.
Goodness, for my goodness is nothing apart from thee.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't know. I think Amina.
Yeah, I mean, This was truly amazing. There was so much still that we wanted to talk about that we didn't get
Part
a chance
two,
to
part
talk
two,
about.
part
Yeah,
two.
but
No, 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 no. With Father
it's
Joseph, third time, repeat it.
it it's good. It's good to take time to self-reflect, to dig deep, um, and to and to really know thyself. For all of us, seasonally, daily, there's a lot of goodness that can be discovered, and there's a lot of goodness that God is willing to share with us and walk with us that goes undiscovered when we choose to ignore that and be distracted by everything else. That's kind of I'm gonna take that and think on it for some time, um, and see what comes out of it, because I feel like that's just in today's day and age, distractions and more than anything else are keeping us away from being our truly authentic self, and it's hurting us and hurting our community and people who see us. So I'm praying that if you're listening to this today, or if you had a chance to listen, that you might be willing to think on this for a little bit and see and pray on it and see how God directs you to take this information and use it for your sake and the sake of others around you. I can't thank you, Father Joseph and Father Kyrollos, enough for this amazing and heart-stimulating conversation, mind-stimulating, joyful and burdensome, all in the same sentence. Thank you so much for being here. Father Elijah, thank you for always being an amazing co-host.
I added nothing to this conversation. It was just nice to sit back and listen.
Pray for us. If you haven't had a chance to check out some of the other episodes, go back on Spotify, on Apple Music, or wherever you get your podcasts, and tell Siri to play the reintroduction podcast for you. And give us some feedback, send us some messages, tell us what you think. If you've got some thoughts, comments, opinions, questions, please, we would love to hear from you. Pray for us. And until next time, we'll see you then. Take care. Have a good night.